Police in Surrey, B.C. are investigating the shooting death of one of the men acquitted in the 1985 Air India bombing. Police say the attack on Ripudaman Singh Malik appears to be targeted. They also say a vehicle suspected to be involved in the shooting was later found engulfed in flames. Malik was cleared on charges of mass murder and conspiracy in 2005. He was on trial for the bombing of Air India Flight 182. The plane was headed from Toronto to London when a bomb detonated and crashed near Ireland. All 329 passengers and crew were killed. Most of the victims were from Toronto and Vancouver. So for more now on this developing story, I do want to bring in Kash Heed. He is the former Solicitor-General of British Columbia, and he also served as Chief Constable of the West Vancouver Police Department. Kash, thank you so much for making time for us.
Good afternoon.
Okay, so you spent time policing and in provincial government when Malik gained notoriety. Is this kind of ending for him almost preordained?
I'm actually surprised that it took so long to get to this particular tragic point. Again, there's been some ill will that's been held towards all of the people that were allegedly involved in the Air India bombing, and he certainly was one of the key figures that people held a lot of animosity towards. He's been very active in his political advocacy, which a lot of people don't necessarily agree with. He's tried to make amends with the community here in British Columbia by donating to certain causes, but people are very suspicious of the behavior, and the fact that he had such a strong tie to some of these extremist groups was very concerning, not only for law enforcement, but certainly people of the South Asian community here in British Columbia.
What does it say about the scenario itself, or this incident, when we hear Surrey RCMP, of course, say that it was targeted? They suspect that it was targeted, but they also say that it happened at 9:30 a.m. local time, so very brazen in the nature of it.
Well, we've had a lot of these types of killings take place lately, more or less related to the extensive gang violence that's taken place here in British Columbia, but this has the earmarkings of a paid hit. And certainly a lot of those paid hits that we've had go unsolved. So I'm not holding the cards that this is going to be solved relatively quick. I think it's going to take a prolonged investigation, hopefully not as long as it took us to get Malik to court on Air India, but certainly it's going to take a lengthy period of investigation. I'm not sure we are going to be successful at the end of the day, at least finding out who the individuals were, unfortunately, that committed this crime.
You know, you mentioned it has the earmarkings of a paid hit. What are some of those?
Well, number one is it doesn't matter the time of day, and we've had these brazen daylight killings take place. Number two is it usually takes place of a frequent area of the targeted victim, and this being an employment or somewhere that he frequents or works at. Number two is a few blocks away you find the vehicle on fire, like we found in this particular incident. We will ask for the same thing like we do every time this takes place. If you have any dashboard cams, please come forward with that information. Please come forward with it. We have very little success from a law enforcement standpoint of dealing with that particular crime. The best approach here is to try and get the intelligence that we can to get people to come forward as a confidential informant to talk about what has taken place. That is going to be the only way we are going to solve this particular crime because there are, like I mentioned earlier, there are several people that hold ill and hold malice towards Mr. Malik.
You know, I wanted to also ask you more broadly about the significance of this crime, of this killing.
Well, when you look at this, this is the largest terrorist incident we had from Canada. We had 268 Canadian citizens that were actually killed as a result of this. Remember, there were two incidents. There was a bomb that was planted on a plane and it went off prematurely at Narita Airport, killing two of the baggage handlers. We had this prolonged trial. It took us 20 years to get Malik and Bagri in front of the courts. It took the largest, or the longest, I should say, court trial in Canada's history, one of the most expensive trials in Canada's history, and at the end of the day, they were acquitted on all charges. There were people that were supposed to give evidence that retracted on their particular evidence. There were several people that we suspected were involved in this. We even had evidence of where they actually did trial bombings. We had evidence of financial transactions. We had so much evidence, but for some reason we were unable to satisfy the courts of the guilt of the people that were involved.
And finally, I wanted to ask you about the relatives of the victims. You know, the Air India bombing, as you mentioned, is Canada's worst mass murder, June 1985, more than 37 years ago. It was just a few weeks back that, in fact, the 37th anniversary was marked in BC. So the murder still remains unsolved. How do you imagine the victims or the relatives of victims are reacting to this news today?
I think it's a bit of mixed feelings with regard to what has happened. It's a reminder of them losing a loved one, and I've spoken to many of them that lost people that were related to this terrorist attack. I think it's going to be that mixed emotion. I think it's going to bring back a lot of those hard feelings that they had with respect not only to the political advocacy of this individual, but some of the other governments that were involved in this type of activity. So it's going to be a very mixed day, mixed emotions for many of these people with respect to what has taken place. And that's the unfortunate part of it. We did not get justice out of what occurred. And we still to this day have not got justice for the lives that were lost as a result of the behavior of this terrorist group. So again, I would hate to be, and I don't want to ever be in the position of some of these victims that carry on with the ill will and the feelings toward what has occurred.